G'day everyone and welcome. Today I have an interview for you with the lovely Laurie Caffery. She is a ceramic artist who is doing amazing things and has been really successful. It is her thing. She's been an artist from the get-go and she does this amazing mashup of ceramics and illustration that is very unique and very much her own special style. And she sells primarily online and markets primarily via Instagram. So we're going to talk a lot about that in today's episode. Now, Laurie is someone who is an artist and she's done a really good job of building up her reputation to the point where she can charge top dollar for her work because it is in demand and it's something people want. She does the release model where she releases a couple of times a year and she teases what she's going to be releasing. And I think you will find this a really interesting chat today. Now, if you have any questions, of course, as always, leave them in the comments below the YouTube video or hit us up on Instagram. I'm at Create and Thrive over there. And I'm just as I release this, Laurie's about to do a drop of her spring line and there's some super cute stuff in there, so you might miss out because she usually sells that pretty fast, but you might want to check it out as well. And so if you are a ceramicist, an artist, I think you'll find this really useful. If you are watching on YouTube, please do give me a like. If you like this one, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss my future interviews with very successful craftspeople, makers, artists, and also all my videos on how to run a thriving and profitable handmade business as well. And if you're listening on the podcast, please give us a rating and a positive review. That would be really lovely. Now let's get into this interview with Laurie. I'm here today with Laurie Caffery. Welcome to the podcast, Laurie.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to chat with you about your story and your journey and your beautiful ceramics. How long have you been making ceramics?
Oh, that is a toughie right off the bat. Well, I started wheel throwing in high school.
Okay.
But I graduated in 2010. But I considered it to be more of just a fun, playful thing. I took illustrating much more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was in college, I started to take it much more seriously. I graduated from college in 2014, and then I started really pursuing it as a career in 2016.
Okay. So it was kind of a bit of an evolution there. Because I know in your bio, you talk about the fact that when you were a kid or when you were younger, you really were more focused on the illustration and the painting side of things.
That's right. My mother is an amazing painter, Debbie Arnold, and I grew up around her working and grew up around many artists and craftspeople. My father is also in the creative sector in a way. He is a home builder, a custom home builder. So I grew up with a lot of craftspeople. But for me, illustrating and painting was the most accessible. And it was also what I naturally excelled at the most, which is obviously appealing.
Yeah, well, if it's the easy thing, it's kind of easy to go down that path, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you had a very creative upbringing, surrounded by a lot of creative people. Was it kind of a no-brainer that you would go into the creative arts yourself? Or, do you have siblings who've done other things or was it just your personality, do you think?
I'm an only child,
Mhm.
and it was very much assumed that I would always be an artist.
Okay.
That was my personality is naturally very introverted. I prefer working alone. I've always been very quiet and shy, and as a as you would classify a children now, highly sensitive.
Mhm.
So I just preferred being on my own, and I think that between that and my natural proclivity toward the arts, it was just always assumed that I would be an artist.
Mhm. And that's interesting. I'm an only child as well. My mother was also an artist. There you go. Although it was a bit of a accident that I ended up in that field. But it's interesting talking to you about this because so many people I speak to, uh, it wasn't their first choice. You know, it wasn't the thing they did first. They didn't go straight into a creative career or straight into an arts career because you have was it a Bachelor of Fine Arts?
That's
So
right.
you kind of studied that at university level as well. Was
Mhm.
that the point where you made that like switch over to ceramics during your studies?
Yes, I think it was my freshman year of undergrad. I took a wheel throwing class and I was awful. Truly, truly terrible. Wheel throwing is challenging. It doesn't depend on talent in
Mm.
any way. It's really muscle memory and skill. And I was very, very accustomed to relying on my natural talent in the
Mhm.
arts. And so I found it incredibly frustrating to be kind of thwarted and being the worst in an arts class for the first time in my life.
Right.
And so that kind of made me a little bit obsessed with it.
hmm You're like, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I couldn't figure out why it was so difficult for me, and I just wanted to keep going with it. And it also captured my interest in a way that other media hadn't before because it was so challenging. Because even when you, if you talk to any ceramicist, they will tell you that it is humbling. It is the second you think you get something down, something changes. There's a material shortage and you have to change your glaze recipe, or your kiln misfires, or something cracks for no reason apparent to you. And it really keeps you engaged because it's a constant challenge.
hmm That's really interesting. Being, a silversmith jeweler myself, I do all the bits and I work on it till it's right.
Yeah.
I did a short course in pottery ceramics as well. And yeah, it's a very different experience because you can't control the whole process, that you have to let go of control and kind of give it over to the kiln gods and just hope
Yeah.
that it ends up working. And especially, the sort of work you do, you illustrate some of, if not all of your work. So you've kind of put that extra layer of love and attention into your pieces. So it must be, yeah, a challenge to kind of let go when things don't go right.
Yes, there's an enormous risk reward, and I've always been jealous of other mediums. I mean, obviously, all medias have their own challenges,
Mm,
but with ceramics, um, particularly functional ceramics, you can't, once it's gone through the kiln, there's only so much you can do
mm,
because the piece has to be fired in order to be fully functional. So
mhm,
I couldn't get a piece out of the kiln and then repair it with paint or glue. It's just it is what it is once it's
mm,
come out of the kiln. And potters hold themselves to quite a high standard when it
mm.
comes to flaws in their work.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think the illustration element of your ceramics is something that sets it apart. Was that something you did right from the beginning, or was that something that you sort of came to later on in the process?
That's actually something I came to later. It's something I oddly kind of fell into in let's see, it was 2016. I was actually teaching pottery at an ashram.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was teaching, like, it was usually 1 hour lessons one time. It was part of the like hotel experience because people would come for these meditation retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was kind of floundering a bit. I wasn't enjoying teaching as much as I thought I would, and I was looking for what to do. And my former professor, Lynn Duryea, emailed me basically a link to a scholarship application to Aramont Arts and Crafts, which is in Gatlinburg, Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
and is one of the best craft schools in the US. and encouraged me to apply for a scholarship, and basically said they extended the deadline. They're giving money away, just apply. And when you apply to a scholarship for a craft school like this, you get options of different classes, and they basically put you in whatever class works for their schedule and whatever has availability for you. So I signed up for, I can't remember the other courses that I signed up for, but I know that the course that I ended up getting was the last on my list. And it was for illustration on ceramics,
Right. Okay.
with reviews. And I almost didn't go because I was just like, I don't know, I'm not really interested in that, but I'll try it. And then I went, and she was teaching inlay, slip inlay, which is the surface decoration technique that I use. And I was so excited about it. It just completely changed everything. And that is where I started illustrating on my work.
Oh, that's so funny. Like, isn't that like you almost didn't go? You're like, oh, I don't think this is for me, but it ended up being the best thing ever. That
Yeah.
happens to so many of us, doesn't it? So, did it take a while to sort of settle into your style doing that sort of artwork? Like, did you already have sort of a ceramic style that you had developed, and then you kind of had to develop a new illustrative ceramic style?
I can't say that I had a style at all when I
Okay.
started with this technique. When I was in undergrad, I felt very pressured to make kind of academic sculptural work, very conceptual work. And so I actually made completely different work, even though I was more interested in functional ceramics. I felt like it was very difficult to stand up for myself and critique with functional ceramics. So I did sculptural work in undergrad, and I was encouraged to keep up with that work, but I felt like it was done. I did feel strongly about that body of work, but once it was done, I just felt like it was finished. And when I came back to it, when I was in teaching at this ashram, I was essentially starting from scratch. I didn't have a style. I could throw on the wheel, but I didn't have an especially strong throwing skills. And I was a baby. I didn't know what I was doing. So it very much has evolved quite a bit over years.
So you were teaching ceramics at that stage. Were you selling your work at all, or were you just teaching at that stage?
At that stage, I was just teaching, and then I began selling my work towards the end of that year after I had taken that workshop. I started selling my work just at local craft fairs and things like that.
And was it a deliberate decision to kind of go down that route of making to sell, or did it just sort of, evolve that way?
It was a deliberate decision. I knew that, well, I guess at that point I probably didn't know, but I thought that functional ceramics was part of the draw was functional ceramics was that I could figure out how to do it myself. I could figure out how to do it from creating the piece to marketing to selling the piece on my own without relying on galleries. Whereas with quote unquote fine art or large scale sculpture, I couldn't do that on my own.
Right.
So it was very appealing to me, the sales aspect of it. Although, of course, I didn't enjoy the craft fairs themselves as an introvert.
Yes, that is a challenge.
Yeah.
That's why I like to sell online. So at what stage did you, like, you started at craft fairs? Did you do do you do wholesaling consignment as well? And then at what stage did you sort of go into the online element of things as well?
I do not do well. I just started unfolding wholesale back into my business very, very in a very, very limited way. It's just a very simple design that I've come up with a gallery. But other than that, all of my work that I would consider to be like my signature pieces, I sell directly almost 90% of the time. And I was doing about maybe 40% online and 60% consignment or wholesale or craft markets until and just really cobbling it together until 2020. And then when the pandemic happened, my markets were canceled. Gallery business pretty much shut down. And so I decided to make a sharp pivot to selling my work online. And that has really worked out.
That's awesome. I mean, I think 2020 was a good time for a lot of people with our, craft businesses. Everyone was shopping online and so on and so forth. Have you found that momentum has maintained since the pandemic has sort of come to an end and everyone's gone back to normal life?
Fortunately, it has. I am honestly just blown away by how it has maintained. It's kind of shocking. I thought that after the pandemic that I would probably need to reroute a little bit. But no, it has been sustainable to keep my business online.
That's awesome. Okay, well, let's talk business for a bit because people will be wondering, how do you market your work? How do you get it out in front of people?
Instagram is where I do 95% of my marketing. I really rely on Instagram. I can't say there's a magical formula, although people are always looking for it. I think that for me, when I started really seeing a difference with Instagram, it was when DMs became a thing. When direct messages became a thing, I was like, oh, great. Like, here's another aspect of Instagram and communication that I have to keep up with. And I found it frustrating, but it has been so wonderful to truly build authentic relationships with my customers. I mean, I go out to coffee with some of my customers when they're in Asheville, because Asheville, North Carolina is a tourist town. And I've built real relationships with these people. I'm on their Christmas card list. Like we have become friends and they have become my cheerleaders. And so my collectors, most of them, I have a true relationship with. And that has been really wonderful. And so in terms of Instagram, people think of the follower count as being the most important thing, but my follower count is actually very modest in comparison with a lot of people who are doing what I do. And it is not that important, I don't think. I think that the people, more than building a follower count, it's more important to have an organic growth and to have authentic relationships with your customers, not to have those quippy reels that get you like 100 followers in a day or whatever. So Instagram has been huge for me. Also email lists, which are kind of, I think, something that craftspeople should pay a lot more attention to. And Instagram is a business. It's not going to last forever. Something else will come. But email, in my opinion, will last forever. We need to have that direct communication with our clients. And also people, at least for my client base, a lot of my clients are like me. They're young parents, or they're maybe middle-aged, and they're just kind of not necessarily wanting to be on their phone all the time, as Instagram has changed so much over the recent years. So to have their email, to have a way to directly reach out to them has been incredibly valuable.
That's a really interesting point. I talk a lot about this concept of the type of business you have and the type of customers you have will impact the type of marketing you do. And, if you have a lot of one-time customers, then you really want to be focusing on bringing more people. So, search engine optimization, advertising, stuff like that. But if you have this sort of business, like I think you do, where you get collectors and you get people buying from you numerous times over and over, then that's where you really want to lean into like the Instagram, the email list, because like you said, you're nurturing a relationship with those people and they're coming back and following your story and following your work because they do love what you do and they want to see what you're up to and they want to collect your pieces. So that's a really interesting point. And I think like you said, I think a lot of people neglect the email list in favor of the Instagram. Whereas if you can get people to take that leap across and get them on your email list, you have that direct communication with them that you basically own. Then you own their email as long as they willing to hear from you. Whereas when you're using a third party platform, you're at the mercy of the algorithm. You're at the mercy of the business, and like you said, I mean, people who used Google Plus. I mean, does anybody remember that? MySpace back in the day, even Facebook, right? So
Forgot about Google Plus.
I know, right? These places will come and they will go, but if you have people's email, you can always reach them. And I think that is a really powerful marketing strategy. Speaking of collectors, I think that's one thing I am envious of ceramicists about is that you tend to, have those people who do collect your work, especially, I guess, having functional ceramics. You probably have people who want sets of things, who want to have like a set of plates or mugs or bowls or whatever. Do you find that is a large proportion of your customer base are people who do come back and collect your work?
Yes, absolutely. Many of my customers I know by name and they come back sale after sale and they will collect my work for years. I think that you made a good point with, people who make single sales who aren't looking for a collector base will market themselves differently. And I think that's a really good point. But for me, with ceramics, I need somebody who values my work and who knows who I am and knows the quality and the time that goes into each piece in order to pay me fairly, essentially. Because with ceramics, it has such a low perceived value. You really have to have people who are your people to collect your work.
Yeah, I collect handmade mugs. Okay, so the amount of times I go to a craft show or craft fair or a shop or whatever, and I see a mug and it's like $20, a handmade mug, and I'm just like, how are you making any money selling?
You're not.
That's right. It's like it's impossible. It's just. And like you said, you can go to Kmart and get a mug for $2 if you just want a mug.
Right.
But if you want a piece of art, then that's a different story. It's functional art as far as I'm concerned. And actually, for Christmas, my husband made me a mug rack holder thing, so it's underneath our cupboards in the kitchen, and so all the mugs are like displayed. And I love it. It's the best thing ever. And that's the thing. I want to look at these things. I want to enjoy them. I want to have them around me. And I think you need those sort of people who do value that. I actually get excited when I see a mug that's like $60. I'm like, oh, good. Someone's actually charging something towards what they should be charging, for their work. Because it is, I've done ceramics. I know how much work it goes into something that seems so simple, especially stuff with patterns and decorations and illustrations like yours. That adds a whole nother level of complexity and artistic skill and time, to each of your pieces. So that is a really important point that people do undercharge so incredibly frequently. And it's not only a problem for them, it's a problem for everybody, because then people think, oh, well, it can't be that much work because they're just charging $30 for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, do you sell, excuse me, do you sell just on your own website, or do you have like, do you sell on venues like Etsy or Amazon Handmade or anything like that?
I just sell on my own website.
Mm-hmm. And did you find it was, did you ever start off with any of those other venue platforms, or did you just go straight to selling on your own website?
I did. I started with Etsy,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe I worked through Etsy until, hmm, I'm not sure, probably like 2018 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really liked Etsy a lot. It was a great platform to begin on,
Mm-hmm.
but the fees became quite high. And the thing about Etsy is, at least the way it was then, is they keep your customers' emails. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a big problem for me, especially considering the fees that they charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have no way to gain that direct access to people. I mean, I
Exactly.
always tell my students, you can put your email sign up link, in your thank you message and in your shipping messages and send them a card in their parcel and stuff like that. But yeah, it is an uphill battle to get people onto that mailing list from that platform, I think, because it's like when you shop on any venue, Amazon, eBay, whatever, like you bought it on that platform, you don't necessarily think of the artist. Whereas if you're buying direct from the artist, then you're more likely to know who they are and remember them and go back again and again. So I think that's an important point as well. So with the development of your business and the development of your marketing, what sort of content do you focus on? Because I know, like, because you're mostly on Instagram, it's always changing. I've noticed in the last month or so a massive decrease in my reach on Instagram. Don't know what's going on there, whatever, things happen. It was all about the reels, and now they're kind of pulling back a bit on that and doing, oh no, do more posts and do more carousels. So do you have like a concrete strategy that you use, or do you just make sure you show up regularly?
I wouldn't say that I have a concrete strategy. I have spent countless hours over the years trying to kind of compute one, but then by the time I come up with one, either I get bored or Instagram's algorithm changes.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I try to post on my feed, whether it be a reel or a carousel. Carousels are excellent
Mm-hmm.
for performance in comparison with a static post. So I try to either post a carousel or a reel 3 times a week, 3 to 5 times a week.
Okay. So
Usually,
sorry, go ahead.
usually it's 3 times a week, and then as I get closer to a sale, you can see me kind of ramp up. I try to post on my stories every day.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll take a break on weekends. And as far as the other stuff goes, like channels,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't quite gotten into that yet. I like having direct access to the folks that are like the most engaged and interested in my work. But I don't like sending them notifications every
Mm-hmm.
time I have something small to say. So I do have the channels set up, but I don't use them very often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't heard a lot of talk about channels. That's an interesting thing, maybe to investigate in the future. But I like
Yeah.
what you said about, you're not like there every day. You're not like posting all the time. And the stories thing is interesting though, that, you try to stay active on there, because then I guess you're top of mind and you sort of pop up in the stories for the people who engage with you regularly. So they're seeing that. And of course, you're sharing that behind the scenes stuff that in your particular niche, letting people into your world, letting them see the process and stuff is really important, to see that sort of behind the scenes. Now, do you do the sort of traditional release a collection style thing that a lot of ceramicists do?
I do.
Yep.
I have a collection of work available I used to a lot more frequently, but now I think this year I'll have 4 sales,
Mm-hmm.
4 online sales. And they're seasonal, and my illustrations change based on the season. I'm having a lot of fun with that right now. Um, so yeah, I do like a build up I spend like 12 weeks making a collection, and then I will have one big release.
Mm-hmm. So you get sort of your income comes in 4 big chunks or whatever, however
Yeah.
many releases you do throughout the year. Are you at the stage where you find that your stuff sells out very quickly, generally speaking?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
fortunately.
Yeah. It's a great model. It's a great place to be in. And I think ceramics is like the perfect ground for that. Like I see a lot of ceramicists doing that particular style of selling, you know. Do you have any pieces that are reproducible or that you just have available all the time?
No, not right now, although I did hire an assistant this year, so I'm considering having my shop open more often.
Mm-hmm.
But my studio is quite small. It's in a single car garage.
Mm-hmm.
So my packing area is not always my packing area. It's usually used heavily for something else.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to have a single order come in on a Wednesday afternoon and need to ship it out is not ideal. It's
Mm-hmm.
a lot better for me to have all of the shipping done at once because it really takes up like the whole space.
Right.
So I haven't figured out a way to do that sustainably.
Mm-hmm. Might be the next thing next year, this year,
Yeah.
developing. Okay, so let's take a step back and talk about sort of life as a whole. You know, you're a full-time artist, full-time ceramicist. What does sort of your day, your week look like? How do you balance all of the creative work and the production work and the marketing work and the rest of life?
It's tough. And it's something I think about all the time. It's something I have a very difficult time with. I have always struggled with workaholism.
Mm-hmm.
And as I think a lot of creatives do, and a lot of people kind of in this stage of humanity do. Um, but since I've had a son, my son is 16 months old. And since I've had a son, it's really forced me to constantly be reevaluating my priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And before he was born, it was like I could just work however much I wanted and work all the time. And it wasn't great for my mental health, but it was amazing for my business. And it felt pretty good most of the time in the short term. So it's been incredibly challenging. Right now, my a day in my life looks like in the morning, I wake up with my son. He's in daycare 3 days a week. So I will get up with him, get him ready to go, and we'll have breakfast together. And then my husband will take him in, and then I will get to work and exercise if I feel like it is the move. That's another piece that I struggle with.
Yeah.
Um, and I will work until 5:30 at the latest, and then I'll come in and spend time with my son. He goes to bed at 7:30, and then I sometimes will do a little bit of computer work or like making reels
Mm-hmm.
on the couch while I'm hanging out with my husband before bed.
Mm.
But that kind of just depends on how motivated I'm feeling and how pressed I am for time at the
Mm.
moment. Um, so that's a normal day. And then I have been taking weekends off,
Mm-hmm.
which is not something I used to do a lot before my son was born. But that has been really nice.
Mm. Spending the time, family time. other
Yeah,
time, downtime. So does your husband
yeah.
have a job outside? He doesn't work with you in the business?
He does not. He
Okay.
is a biologist.
Okay.
So that's also, he is a huge part of why my business has been able to go where it has. He is very handy. He and my father-in-law built my studio.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it was already a garage, but they insulated it and finished it and everything. And then he puts a lot of time into childcare. When
Hmm.
my son was born, I wasn't able to take as much time off for maternity leave as I would have liked. So he was able to kind of pace out his paternity. Fortunately, he had paternity leave,
Hmm.
and he was able to kind of pace it out so that we were able to piece it together and keep my son home for the first year.
Hmm.
And then you're in Australia. This is probably like horrifying to listen to because you have way better maternity leave and stuff there, don't you?
We do, yeah. We have
Yeah,
socialized healthcare and a lot of
yeah.
maternity leave. Yeah.
The US is just like absolutely abysmal.
Hmm.
Oh my
I
goodness.
think you're the only like developed country that doesn't have like government mandated maternity leave.
It's ridiculous. And I
Mm.
could honestly talk about it for 3 hours, but I won't spare you. Um, but yeah, so he has been a huge part of it. He actually wakes up right now. He wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning and works from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. so that when my son is done with daycare, they hang out.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I'm able to work a full day on the days that my son is in daycare.
Hmm.
And then on the days that my son isn't in daycare, uh, I take at least one day off a week to be
Hmm.
with him.
That's cool.
So yeah.
It's a challenge. I mean, I don't have children, so I'm lucky to kind of my time is my own. But I know the
Mhm.
majority of people listening probably do have kids, and that is a huge part of that balancing act is trying to fit everything in around that. And like, I'm curious about like the creative aspect of things for you. One, has that changed since having kids, like your creative energy? And two, like how does that work? Because you do work on that rhythm. Like has that just become kind of part of your life now that you're like, okay, now it's time to create a new theme, a new set of illustrations, a new like it, I'm someone who generally is of the opinion that creativity, you can't follow the muse when it's your job. You have to work at it and you have to sit down and make it happen. So is that sort of
Mhm.
how you feel about it as well?
It is.
Mm.
I look at it, I do follow the muse a bit here and there. There are times where I will spend like 8 hours working on a piece that I could have spent 30 minutes working on
Mhm.
and sold it for the same amount. But I'm enjoying myself and I'm learning something new and all of that good creative juicy stuff is happening.
Mhm.
So since my son was born, it has been a blur. I can't say concisely what has happened in my creative process. It's been a huge, huge challenge. Um, but I do look at it as a business. It's my heart.
Mm.
I love it, of course, but it is when it comes to the illustrations, the way my brain works is I have jumping off points and then so I have like right now I'm just starting a new batch of work and I have a list of themes that I want to explore, like
Okay.
camping. Some of them are very general, camping, unicorns, and then it kind of narrows way down. And then once I'm within the process, I feel the creative goodness happening,
Mhm.
and then I get more excited about it. And as I begin illustrating, it looks less like a to-do list and more like a fun, you know, artistic process. But yeah, there definitely are days where you have a to-do list and you do it. I have to illustrate 10 unicorn mugs today or whatever.
Yeah.
That happens.
Speaking of quantity, that's just a question I have. How do you know how much to make? Like, is this something you've just kind of developed over time? Like, how much quantity to make for each release? Or is it like I have to make X amount to make X amount of dollars, and that's what I'm going to do?
I love this question. I have a spreadsheet that I am incredibly proud of that has, my husband made it for me because I'm not a math person. But it has like all the little formulas in it that do all the things. So I have my year, a tab of the spreadsheet has my year segmented out by sale. And so I have my income goals for each online sale, for gallery or wholesale sales. And then I also have my what I pay my assistant in there and my expenses, my quarterly expenses. And then in another tab of the spreadsheet, I have my calendar. And then in the other tabs, I have my list of what to make, which is the columns are the item and then the item price and then the quantity. So essentially, I work backwards. I have what I need to make in a sale and what I need to make in a year, and then break it down to what I need to make in a sale, and then break it down by piece and what I want to make, what I'm inspired by making. I always make mugs. Those are any potter's bread and butter. But I like right now, I'm really excited about making lidded pieces and miniatures. So I'm making a lot of those. And I just break it down that way. And then that breaks down into a list of what I need to make. And then as far as the motifs go, that is essentially based on the time of year and what I'm feeling and what I'm excited about at the moment.
Man, I love that. That is so good. The spreadsheet. Like, you know what you got to do. Like, I've got to do this much. I've got to do X amount. That's fantastic. I guess, like, I think some people will be like, oh, no, that's like messing with my creative vibe. But I'm like, I think constraints can help creativity. Like, having some constraints around your creativity can actually improve things sometimes. So sometimes when everything's just up in the air and airy-fairy, you get stuck. You get like paralyzed because you don't know what to do or where to go. Whereas you're like, I know like the pieces I need to make, but then I can play with, the type of pieces I want to make. I can play with the designs I'm going to have, and that sort of gives your creativity a channel to run down.
Yeah, I really need those constraints or else I become really anxious. And when I'm anxious, I'm not able to focus or enjoy the creative process. So when I have a list and I know what I have to work with, it just makes everything feel way more fun and easy. But it is definitely a lot of work. I don't know any, and none of my friends who are artists work this way.
Right. Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it seems to be working for you. So maybe somebody will hear this and go, hey, maybe that'll work for me too. I love it. Okay. So what would be, you would say, we're gonna do a two-part question. What would you say would be your biggest challenge in your work, or that has been your biggest challenge that you've overcome in growing your business? And then what would you say has been one of the biggest highlights of this journey of growing your business?
My biggest challenge has been motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it just threw a wrench in the gears that I didn't expect. I didn't know how difficult it would be. I didn't know how wonderful it would be, but I didn't know how difficult it would be. I didn't know that babies didn't sleep at night, and so you couldn't just like work when they were sleeping. So that has been difficult for sure. And the biggest highlight has been my online business and how that has been able to grow and sustain my practice. It's exactly what I wanted. It's exactly what my goal was to have like 4 online sales a year and have them sell out and then just be able to do it again and work by myself at home. That has by far been the biggest highlight, to actually have a dream of mine become a very concrete reality has been incredible.
It's a pretty amazing feeling. Being able to bring that into reality and actually see it happen. So congrats on that. I know it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of time. And I think that's another important takeaway from this. You know, you've been doing this, developing your strategy. Oh, delivery. I think Nick, thank you. My husband will take care of that. My office looks over, like we're on a second story that looks over the driveway, so I can see who's coming. So yeah, that, you know, it's a long-term process. You know, it's not something like these successful sort of businesses like yours that built up. You know, you had a long process of learning new skills, and then you had a process of developing your style, and then you had the process of, well, how am I going to sell? Let's try different ways of selling. You know, and it took a number of years, that process, to reach the point that you're at now, where things are kind of working the way you want them to be working. It's not something that you can just sort of come up with overnight necessarily. And I think a lot of beginners sort of think they can dive straight into that, oh, it's all going to work straight away. And then it might, but for most of us, it is a process that we have to develop. So what do you see the future? Like, are you just like, I just want more of this. I just want to keep doing my 4 times a year sale. I just want to keep playing with my artistic skills and my themes, and or are there like do you have like bigger dreams or anything else that you want to do with your work?
I don't have bigger dreams. This is what I want to be doing. I think that in the future, I would like to have more ease and more stability. I would like to be able to, for example, like take weekends off reliably, like know that that wasn't even a possibility, that I was going to have to work extra hours, that I could spend that time with my family instead. I would like to be able to retire one day. So the long-term goals, I'm really not sure. I know that for at least the next 5 years, I want to be doing this. And as far as the far future, I'm really not sure what it looks like to be. The landscape changes so quickly these days. I think that working directly with customers is wonderful, and it's what I want to be doing. But I'm not sure if I will be able to, when I'm older, if I'll want to or be able to fulfill all of those different aspects of the business that I'm fulfilling now. Like I mean, I do have an assistant, which has been amazing, but I'm doing everything, you know, marketing, making, every part of the business, except now I don't have to mop the floors anymore, which is like the only.
It's like having an apprentice. You can do all that horrible work that I don't want to have to do.
My assistant is wonderful.
That's awesome. And I love what you say there. I think that's really wonderful. Like you've reached it. You're here. You know, you've reached that point that you wanted to get to, and you're happy to stay there. And I think that's also a really important lesson or thing for people to know, is that, you know, this idea of growth. You don't always have to be doing something different. You don't have to grow your business bigger than it already is. Like, reach the point where you're happy and just stay there. That's what I've done, and that's what you've done. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. And I think it's really quite fulfilling to reach that point and know that you're there and you can just keep things going. And I think, you know, it's all right to small as well, like say within the bounds of what you can do, maybe with one assistant or something like that. You don't have to be creating a big production house and turning it into like
Right.
something massive.
Yeah, I have absolutely no desire to do that.
No, because you have the freedom to like, do things the way you want to do them at this point in
Mhm.
time, which I think is a really good thing. So, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to other makers in business? What's something that you would like to impart onto them?
Um, n- don't underestimate marketing.
Hmm.
I I feel like I see a lot of people who are either um a little bit too hyped on the marketing and not hyped enough on the craftsmanship aspects,
Hmm.
or vice versa. It's like these two schools of thought, like
Mm.
the craft school people who aren't super interested in Instagram or don't really know what's going on with it, or the people who are very, very interested in Instagram and don't know a lot about craftsmanship. It's truly a balance. I have spent almost as much time thinking about and dealing with marketing as I have about craftsmanship. Both are incredibly important. I'm not saying that you need to have a formal education to be an artist. You certainly don't. I think that's a bit elitist.
Mm.
Um, but you do need to have both,
Mm.
especially now. I I don't think that means you need to do like the trending quippy reels. You can find a way that feels authentic to your own voice.
Mm.
But you do need to be out there. You need to have a website. You need to have an email list. You need to have the foundation there if you want to build a business on it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Love that. Did you perhaps bring a quote along today to share with people that inspires you?
I did. It was hard to choose one because I have so many. But my quote is choose discomfort over resentment.
Oh.
And I believe that is from Brene Brown. I did a Google because I wanted to attribute it correctly.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, I have a habit as my business has grown. I've fortunately been in the position to need to say no to a lot of things over the past 3 years or so.
Mhm.
And it is just so much better to say no to something than to sign up for it and be resentful.
Mhm.
Um, and as an artist, you're putting yourself out there every day. You are going to constantly have things coming at you that you feel like you need to participate in order to fit into this certain box that
Mm.
you want, or this certain club that you want to be a part of, or you feel like this working with this gallery or doing this thing or doing this show was on your goals list, and so you feel like you have to do it now. But it's good to just say no to stuff. I you don't have to always say no. I think it's good to say yes. When I was starting out, I said yes to everything and I applied to everything. And
Mhm.
that was so important and foundational for me. But at this point, is it's just important to protect my peace and to protect my time, because
Mhm.
my time is my absolute most valuable asset.
I love that. Choose discomfort over resentment. I haven't heard that
Mhm.
before. And when you dive into that and start picking that apart, that's very interesting. There's a lot there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Laurie, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom and your experience with us. Where can people find you? Obviously, your Instagram, your website, so they can go check out your beautiful work.
Mm-hmm. My Instagram is lauriecaffery.clay,
Mhm.
LaurieCaffery. My website is lauriecaffery.com.
Awesome. And do you have a date for your next release? I'm curious.
That's an excellent question
I
and one that I've been prepared to answer. Um,
can put it in the
I
show
do not
notes.
That's okay. I do not have a set date yet. I know that it will be in late March,
Okay.
likely March 27th, but it is to be announced.
Hmm.
So stay tuned on my Instagram
Yes.
and join my email list if you want to stay in the know.
Absolutely. Best place to get. And I mean, someone like you, if someone is not on your email list, they're going to miss out because the emails that's when you announce it, I'm sure, first is to your email list
Mhm.
so that those
Yeah.
people get first dibs on your work. So
Hmm.
very
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laurie. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching and or listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure, as I said, give me a like if you like this one and a rating and review on Instagram as well. On Instagram? On whatever podcast platform you're listening from. Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. I never remember what it's called these days. I keep changing the name. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found a few nuggets of wisdom in this one today. Make sure to go give Laurie a follow if you did listen to it and check out her work. Thank you again for being here, and I'll catch you in the next episode /video/podcast. Catch you soon. Bye for now.